Hey everyone, this is a clip from a recent episode of the Men of Steel podcast where we talk about Superman and Superman adjacent topics. If you enjoy this clip, check out the podcast. You can find it at certainpov.com or wherever you get your shows. It's interesting right now because we were inundated with like a wave of like Superman is evil kind of media, which is really annoying and kind of whatever. But I actually think this explores one that we gloss over a lot, like the early days of Superman before he's established, but also after he's Superman. Like, it's not Superboy, it's not him in hiding,
it's not Smallville.
It's not exactly.
This
is that window that is usually like it's the pilot of the series, but it's the whole season. And I think that they do a really good job of having that young Superman who lacks confidence in a lot of things, but is very true to who his core is.
I had a realization about the show when I got through like the first few episodes. Clark Kent is the only person who doesn't know what Superman is going to look like, basically. But Clark Kent is by his very nature the kind of person who would create Superman. You know, anytime we see a Superman origin story, there's always this element of dramatic irony. The audience knows he's going to become Superman. Like the whole time you watch Smallville, it's like, he's going to be Superman. That's a Superman thing. Or like, that's a Superman bad guy, or that's a Superman power. And it's got all those like, Leonardo da Vinci, that guy will never amount to anything, like those kinds of jokes of like, I see where this is going. We can be cheeky about it. But starting from the premise of like, Superman doesn't exist yet. Clark Kent exists. He doesn't know who he's going to be. We know who he's going to be, but Clark Kent needs to be the kind of person who would choose to be that. And it's this kind of underrated component of his characterization in any story that treats becoming Superman as his inevitable destiny that he has very little control over. Like in the Snyder movies, when it's like, here is your Superman suit, put it on so you can become Superman. Like they do that a little bit in this show, but like, you know, in the original comics, he's like, I'm going to be a superhero. And his mom is like, I'll sew you your costume and then you can go and be a superhero. And at every step of the process, he's creating Superman. And we sort of lose track of that the longer we've had Superman for culturally. And I like how the show kind of got right back into that of like, Superman doesn't have to exist. Clark Kent has to choose to make that happen.
Yeah. They really hammer into that in the ending of the season with the specific like repetition of the idea of like choices.
Yeah. The recurring question that Clark has is, who am I, throughout this whole thing? But like, that's not really in question in this whole thing. Like, sure, his origins are what he is, like all those things. But like Clark Kent is very defined from the get-go, from the first scene. And like, at no point does that deviate.
Which I think is a very bold choice for Superman, a character that every writer in the past 20 years has been like, but what's his moral breaking point that would make him stop being Clark Kent? It's like, he shouldn't have one of those. Why do you keep putting one of those in there?
Just give him a really bad day.
Yeah, as we all know. Famously reliable narrator, the Joker's thesis on humanity.
Reliable thesis that was disproven in the issue where it was introduced.
Yeah. Red, I think you had said this earlier. I'm pulling out all of your good points to frame the discussion before we get into the episodes themselves. But
betrayal.
The title of My Adventures with Superman, it's Clark's Adventures with Superman. It's like you read it first and it's like, what, is this Lois talking? But it's Clark's Adventures with the notion of being the character of Superman.
Yeah, that was my interpretation. I'm not 100% sure that that was the intention, but considering that Clark is the main focus character and Lois is always a little bit on the outside of that, my read on that is that in that has to be Clark Kent.
Another interpretation could be Jimmy, considering that it's Jimmy like at the end of the episode and is the one kind of exploring everything.
That's true.
But I don't think it really matters because the three of them as really good friends is a really fun component, and seeing how each one of them takes something from the existence of Superman in this world. And like, while Clark, it's him, it still helps him define how he sees himself and like what he thinks his role is.
Yeah, I think that creating the persona of Superman kind of gives him a way to exist where he doesn't feel like he's doing it wrong, because he spends so much of the show being like, there's something deeply wrong with me. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm definitely not normal. And then it's like, well, what if I just did that on purpose? You know, what if I just committed to the bit, styled my hair a little different, and then it wouldn't be so weird that I could fly because I wouldn't be a normal guy who could fly. I'd be Superman who can fly.
The superheroification of lean in.
Remember, if you like the clip, after you're done liking and subscribing, check out certainpov.com, where you can find more episodes of the show, as well as a ton of other great shows.